The Gift of the Magi by O. Henry, appreciating the story. Okay, in fact, it's not difficult to understand the story, but I think most of the readers might not know the allusion of the Magi in the title. Do you want to talk about it and how its biblical allusion is related to the theme of the story?
Well, yes, I mean, modern readers, unless you are a Christian, may not understand the gift of the Magi very well. But I think at the time, people would know the story extremely well.
Okay.
And most people at Christmas, this is obviously allusion to Christmas.
Yeah.
When the Magi brought their gifts, the three wise men, or the Magi brought their gifts to Jesus.
Right.
And if there's any doubt about the meaning of the story, O. Henry, paints a picture very clearly at the end, the final paragraph, where he says, as you know, everyone knows who they are, and he also mentions they invented the art of giving Christmas presents.
Right.
And obviously one of the themes in his story is about giving.
Yeah.
And at this time it happens to be Christmas, which in Western cultures, as you know, is a very important festival.
Of course.
Yes.
Yeah. And people nowadays, they give presents at Christmas time just because the TV commercials, they forget the real meanings of giving gifts during the Christmas time.
Yes, so, I mean, it's become, very materialistic.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So I think the students in Taiwan will not know the real meaning of the Magi and the real, origin of exchange gifts at the Christmas time.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
So with O. Henry's story, he explains it with the final paragraph, and even says, it's one of their greatest treasures of giving. And something you mentioned, you mentioned before this discussion about the irony. He talks about, but in the last word to the wise of these days, let it be said that of all who give gifts, these two were the wisest.
Yeah.
Of all who give and receive gifts, such as they are wisest. Everywhere they are wisest, they are the Magi. Now, just before this, he'd mentioned the two foolish children,
right,
who were the two protagonists in the story. Because in one sense, you could say that what they did in the story was very foolish.
Yeah, right.
And you give all your money away, just as a present.
Yeah.
But in the other sense, they are also the wisest of people, because giving is one of the most beautiful and, in another sense, anti-materialist is a very noble and very good and wise thing to do.
Yeah, I agree with you. Okay. All right. Then after we understand the theme of the story, this story is not difficult to understand, but some details or some words or expressions are a little difficult, right?
Yes.
So let's go into the details.
Okay, well, as you say, the story is, the very simple story of this, young poor couple.
Yeah.
Which I think, as you say, most people can understand clearly.
Yeah.
But like you say, the details obviously... Actually, O. Henry did, at his time, write very clearly, and all his stories are written in the vernacular and very, everyday English of the time.
Yeah.
But at the time, I really think people use much more complex vocabulary
Okay.
that has been simplified and we say dumbed down in modern American English, particularly. Even in England, a lot of dumbing down for many different reasons. Maybe people, the media and has dumbed down our society. But some of the details that he starts with in the very first paragraph, he starts. I don't know if you want to go into the first detail of the money or start with the silent imputation of parsimony.
I think the silent imputation of parsimony.
Yes, this is
we
the
discuss
first.
it first because I think most readers cannot understand this sentence very well.
No, even when I first read it, I had to reread it. It's not easy.
Yeah.
Because obviously silent we know is quiet.
Yeah, right.
But imputation of parsimony, we would never use this in modern English.
Of course, we are dumb.
In a way, yeah.
Okay.
We are. But basically, the imputation of parsimony really means your embarrassment for not being willing to spend your money. Because basically, poor Della had no money to spend.
Right.
So she had to be very, very, very frugal. Not just frugal, not, counting her pennies, but she had to, she had to count every, tiny penny to make sure she wouldn't overspend. And obviously, if you're in this situation, you'll be very embarrassed because other people will be looking at you as a very poor person.
Right. Okay.
And this is what he's saying.
Then, since we are in the first paragraph, then we talk about the beginning.
Right.
It's quite unusual that the beginning begins with money and counting money.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. So what do you think of this part?
Well, I think it's obviously a very creative way of starting a story. Because, in English essays and story writing, we usually start with the setting or the character.
Right.
Whereas, as you point out, the very first line, the very first word, 2 words, $1, and then an 87 cents. The first sentence is just money.
Yeah.
And the second sentence is just 3 words. That was all. So you're thinking already, this is a very small amount of money.
Yeah.
And that's all. And the third sentence again, and 60 cents of it was in pennies.
Yeah. 3 very simple sentences, then come the following one is very difficult. You see the contrast.
Yes. Yeah. So in a way, this is very also a very good style of writing. You're as you say, contrasting simple, easy to read sentences, and then you have a very long and complex sentence that follows, but also focused on money.
Yeah, right.
So, but it's a good style of writing, and you'll break up the rhythm of the sentence structure, which also gives a rhythm to the story and the reader to follow.
Yeah. Okay. So then that is the point we should pay attention to when we read the stories by O. Henry.
Yes,
right?
Very much so.
Okay.
Very, very good at using this style of that he's developed.
Yeah. Okay.
Of writing.
Then how about the other examples you want to mention about the details?
Sure. I mean, well, just before we do that, I mean, at the end of the first paragraph, he ends with another simple sentence to focus on the other point.
Right.
And the next day would be Christmas, which is really a fragment.
Yeah.
and we're English teachers.
Yeah, really.
We would probably tell our students this is wrong.
Wrong.
It's
yeah.
a fragment.
Yeah.
But actually, it focuses us back, and it's actually very clever, very simple, but very clever way of focusing the reader's attention on what he wants us to focus on.
Right. Yeah.
So this is the skill of O. Henry.
Yeah. Relate money to Christmas.
As well,
know?
yes.
Yeah.
Which it is.
Yeah. And then that will make the readers think, a lot. Why the little money and the Christmas time. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
An important
very
issue.
clever beginning, right?
Exactly.
Okay. So
I think that the next thing that people may not understand today is at the bottom of the first page.
Yes.
On the last line, he says something fine and rare, which you understand rare is unusual, and sterling.
Yes.
Now sterling is the currency of England, so it's nothing to do with America. But because it's a currency, sometimes people use sterling as something very valuable.
Okay.
Or very well made, or like a sterling character would be someone of a good character. So here he uses this sterling as to describe what the gift she wants to give. It's a word we wouldn't use so much today.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, since we are at this paragraph, in the second sentence we see 3 words, gray. You see?
Yes, good point.
Yeah.
I mean, he's again using a simple a color.
Yeah.
But he describes, the window. He describes the cat walking, and the fence, and actually the backyard.
Yeah.
All these things are grey, which is Christmas should be a joyous, happy time.
Yeah, right.
But unfortunately for the Della, who's
the poor couple
has only this $1.87 in her pocket.
Yeah.
Everything looks grey.
Yeah,
so this
right.
is a very. It's just a simple, using a colour to describe the feeling and the atmosphere of her. Of her life. Yes.
Yeah. So I think the reader can learn this from the writer. I mean, when they want to practice writing skill or write something.
You don't need to write complex.
Right.
And fancy and difficult to understand.
Right.
Sentences. Just use something very direct.
Yeah.
And it makes your point clearly.
Yeah. Okay. So how about page 2?
Yes, I think page 2, obviously again, with the gift of the Magi, this is from biblical reference.
Yeah.
And here we have 2 more that are mentioned in the third paragraph. Yes.
Right.
When talking about Della's hair and what the possessions that are valuable to these very poor people, O. Henry mentions the Queen of Sheba,
right,
and King Solomon, and the gifts that they gave.
Yeah.
Now, at the time, again, people at this time would all have had to have studied the Bible, and people had to go to church in Western countries. I mean, some people were slowly trying to escape from the church at this time.
Yeah.
But most people would be very highly educated, and people would know Bible stories because they're spoken about.
Right.
So the Queen of Sheba was famous for being this this great beauty, maybe like Della in the story, with her beautiful long hair.
Right.
And the King Solomon was famous, many famous stories for his great wisdom, which is again, maybe not fully understood at this point in the story. But what O. Henry points out in the last paragraph we talked about, the Magi being very wise by giving gifts. It's here alluding to wisdom, maybe not being wise by book learning or study or getting degrees, but wise in how you treat each other.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah.
Right. And, you know, these two people,
Yes.
you know, that also a kind of contrast to the poor couple. You know, these people have precious gems or, you know, gold, or, you know, they are queen and king,
Yes.
right? But, you know, the poor couple just have their hair and the gold watch. But, you know, O'Henry put them at the equal status.
Well, he put them in equal status and even actually mentioned, you're right, something I almost overlooked.
Yeah,
he actually mentioned that Della would have let her hair hang out of the window someday to dry, just to depreciate Her Majesty's jewels and gifts. So Della's hair was so valuable and so beautiful that even the Queen of Sheba, a beauty and, like you say, very, very rich person, may be jealous of her. And then King Solomon, who had jewels and treasures, would be jealous of this perfect watch that Jim also held as precious. So how, you know, even the most wise and beautiful and richest people in history possibly may be jealous of these gifts. This may be slightly ironical, but also pointing out the great, you know, importance of these two possessions, the hair and the watch, that maybe to other people are small things,
right?
But to this couple was everything.
Okay, so then in this way we should not, you know, judge something just according to the material value.
Again, it's something he's pointing out strongly in the story.
Okay, so, you know, in each detail or each time we should, you know, get the message
even
from
though
the writer.
Exactly, this is a short story, but every paragraph, every sentence O. Henry uses is a valuable tool. And you know, to actually understanding and trying to get the reader to think more about their life and our life.
Good. Then how about page 3?
This page 3 in the first big paragraph. He's got a couple of short dialogues and then a very short paragraph. Again, O. Henry breaks up paragraphs into long and short. Probably I'm guilty of teaching my students to write equal length paragraphs, but actually in stories and to break up the rhythm of writing and to make you focus on what is important. O. Henry's very clever. And as you see, he uses a very short 3-sentence paragraph just before, and then he has this long detailed paragraph with this very you know, today we wouldn't really understand what he means by meretricious ornamentation
in a long paragraph,
in the middle of this long paragraph, talking about this the fob that Della buys, this chain, really a chain for the watch. But he's pointing out that this is a fob chain that is very, very simply designed. But actually, because of this simplicity, and it's platinum, obviously very valuable metal, that actually it's more beautiful than something that is very gaudy and flashy which he means by this word meretricious ornamentation, something that is too shiny and too detailed would lose maybe the beauty of something simple.
Yeah, right. We cannot see the real essence of the thing, you know.
Yes, if it's over decorated.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
Yeah. Again, we get the message.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it is a use of very, you know, actually quite deep, difficult vocabulary here.
Yeah.
Which probably at the time people would use this language more readily, which today we've really lost.
Yeah.
In everyday English.
Okay. Then how about page 4?
Yes, page 4. This goes to the bottom of page 4. They've already shared their gifts. And it's at the point right at the bottom of the page where Jim has been in a trance because he's shocked at the fact that Della's cut off her beautiful hair,
right?
Which is it was down below her knees. It must have taken her years and years to grow hair that long, and this was her prize and her beauty. Yeah. And Jim is still looking around the room in shock because his gift to her, as we know if you've read the story, are these, you know, beautiful set of combs, which are useless now. Right. Anyway, he was in this trance, and as the paragraph starts, out of his trance, Jim seemed quickly to wake. Yeah. Because he's this shock and this trance that he's in, and it says he enfolded his Della. Okay. Which really means he's putting his arms around Della. Yeah. As if she is like a present. Yeah. Again, we don't use enfold in this way today, right? Not really. We could say he folds his arms around her today, but or just hugs her. But in a way, it's also, you know, making an allusion to wrapping something, and it's a present. Like Della herself is a gift. So, you know, it's a very clever, you know, term that's very simple but very clever. Again, just 4 words in a sentence. Right. He enfolded his Della, making Della a present, a gift, and something to hug, of value to him. Yeah. And then it's kind of O. Henry uses a lot of humour, amusement. Yeah. He quickly says, for 10 seconds, let us, he says us meaning the reader. The readers, yes. Regard with discreet scrutiny. Discreet scrutiny means you should be be a little modest and shy, and don't stare at people. Maybe they want some privacy, some private life. Okay. And some inconsequential object, something that's not very important. Right. So basically, in the other direction. So basically, he's saying, look away. Yeah. He's saying it in a very, in an amusing way. Yeah. It's difficult, maybe for again an English student to understand. You know. Basically, he's saying, look away from the couple to the reader. Again, you see, O. Henry likes to use complex sentence or, you know, or big words to describe a very trivial and small things. It's a kind of humor, right? Well, it's humor. Also, it's a thing because this young couple who love each other very much are hugging each other. Now, maybe a hug may lead to a kiss. Okay. May lead to something else, we don't know. Yeah, okay. So, but O. Henry quickly just stops it as Jim enfolding Della, like a gift. And unlike today, everything has to be shown, in bright colours, and we're left nothing to the imagination.
Yeah, right.
Whereas here, it's not just being discreet and looking away when a young couple are hugging each other, which we shouldn't want to look at anymore.
Yeah, right.
We should have something left.
Yeah.
Modern day Hollywood, everything is just people ripping off their clothes.
Right. Okay, go.
Yes, I mean, in Hollywood and modern TV, movies, everything is right in your face. And in a way, it leaves the whole. It denigrates the whole of our, our ability to imagine things.
Right.
And reading is a great way to imagine, because we're not given the pictures of the people, the visual. We have to create the people, their lives, and their surroundings in our mind.
Right.
And this is a beauty.
Yeah.
And O. Henry, like all great writers, is very good at this. And why, you can imagine this young couple, and he's being very polite and discreet, and says, "Look away."
Yeah. Okay.
Don't stare at them. And we don't need to, because this isn't the focus of the story anyway.
Yeah. So that's why later on the Magi, the illusion, appears. You see, in the same paragraph, after we look away from Della.
Yes.
So O. Henry seems seems to want the reader to look at the other direction instead of focusing on this couple.
Yes. Well, then the next sentence again, he comes back to even before the Magi, like you say, who brought the valuable gifts. The next sentence, he says $8 a week, or $1 million a year. So again, you mentioned the materialism. What is the difference?
Yeah.
Now he says a mathematician or a wit would give you the wrong answer, because a mathematician would say it's a great difference.
Yeah. Right.
$8 and $1 million a year. Everyone would say, "Oh, it's a big difference." I would prefer the million to the 8.
Yeah.
But he's saying that's the wrong answer.
Yes.
It isn't a big difference. Because the Magi brought valuable gifts, but that was not among them. So he's saying that it isn't money itself.
Yeah, right.
It isn't just how much money, which everything we live our lives is focused on.
So I think here, O. Henry wants to make his message clear to the reader.
Sure.
Unless the reader cannot get the point clearly.
Yes, he's trying to point it out. Yes.
Okay. Then what else about the details you want to mention?
We've covered all the kind of difficult details that maybe the modern reader wouldn't understand.
All right. When do you think there was so-called mendicancy squad? I'm very curious why the homeless people would be arrested during the 19th century America. Is it possible the author wants to use this to criticize the society dominated by capitalism, and therefore poverty equals a crime?
Well, yes, I think that's why he brings in this reference. When today we have the similar things go on in maybe Mexico or Brazil was famous for this. The police.
Yeah.
I mean, Brazil, even the big cities, Sao Paulo and Rio, they're made up of favelas, basically slums. Maybe similar living styles to how people, in America or England even, or a lot of the Western world lived. Because of the industrialization and people had left the farm and the rural areas, moved into the city, but the cities like doubled and tripled and in size in a few years.
Yeah.
And they lived in horrible conditions. And even like, okay, the example would be similar, this mendicancy squad. Basically a group of policemen who were probably being told by rich people who didn't like seeing poor people on the street.
Okay.
Basically clean up the street. So to them, the poor people were garbage.
Okay.
Rubbish. Just garbage on the street. And if you're a rich person, you don't want to look at a poor person.
Okay.
They're just there for your use.
It's quite opposite to my imagination. Since as we know, America is so-called democratic and a free country.
America has no democracy.
You don't think? You think so?
It's a complete illusion.
Really?
America is the only country in the world that was set up as an empire.
Okay.
The founding fathers declared when they broke away from England, they wanted to make this an empire.
Okay.
So from the very beginning, I know this is what everyone thinks American is a land,
right,
home of the free.
Yeah, right.
It is not free. No. It is a total empire. From the very beginning, even to modern day, America has the biggest empire in the world. That's why they involved throughout the 20th century in illegal wars.
Okay.
Vietnam, Iran, Iraq, well not Iran yet, but Iraq and Afghanistan, totally illegal wars.
Yeah, of course.
And they don't care. And they also underground wars by the CIA, who've taken over the whole of South America and Central America.
Right.
Something that actually O. Henry himself would understand, because he ran away. He was not always perhaps the most honest person, as you may know. He's some money went missing from a bank he worked for. Right. And he should have embezzlement. Embezzlement, and he should have gone to court. But on the day he should have gone to court, he jumped on a train and disappeared to South America or Central America, Honduras. And one of his most famous stories, or series of stories, Cabbages and Kings, he wrote was about this country and the people, and he actually coined some phrases we use today, like banana republic.
Yeah, right.
So,
go.
Yes, whereas he lived there for some years, I believe, or for some time, and got to know the people and the way the country was run very well. And again, some very interesting stories. And this Cabbages and Kings was used by Lewis Carroll in Alice, the Alice books. And also Lewis Carroll got this from Shakespeare.
Okay.
And another kind of point that is important, I think, for any student. O. Henry, even though he was, maybe a little bit dishonest and stole some money, we think, not 100% sure, and did many different jobs and tried many different things. from very young, loved reading.
Okay.
And if you look at any great writer, and even students I've seen who are very good at writing, I always ask them, do you like reading? And they always love reading. And that's one of the best ways of learning a language, learning about the world, and also developing your own writing skills.
Of course. Yeah.
As you know.
Then let's come back to the capitalism and
Sure.
New York
Yes.
at O. Henry's time.
Right.
Okay. Can we see something from this story? I mean, O. Henry's critical attitude.
Well, very much so. I mean, he was very angry about someone at the time who had said there were only 400 important people in New York. These are obviously the rich and famous. So Henry wrote the 4 million, many short stories, and he was travelled around. He was supported by his first wife, who came from a rich family, actually.
Okay.
So Henry wasn't against having some money himself, but he saw the disparity of the rich and poor, and he used to hang around in hotel lobbies and talk to everyone he could. He would talk to people on the street. He was a reporter for a paper for a while.
Okay.
The Houston Post in Texas. So he would be reporting on everyday happenings. And his interest when later he went to New York was this amazing city of different immigrants, different backgrounds, all sorts of different jobs, and different lifestyles. And he thought every person, every job, every their hardships and their difficulties, and the poor were just as interesting, if not more so, than the rich people. And why ignore the 4 million?
Okay.
And that's why he wrote this story, the 4 million, and wrote these short stories about each individual life.
Okay. So if the reader is interested in O. Henry's story, then probably they should start with the 4 millions, right?
Well, the 4 million covers. They will cover a lot of his short stories. Yes.
Okay.
I mean, any of his short stories. Pick out any of the short stories.
Okay.
They will. So one of the short stories I think is, I forget the name. I think it's The Yellow Dog, but it's about a dog.
Oh.
And the whole story is the dog's life.
Really?
From a dog's
must be interesting.
Viewpoint. Yes.
Okay. All right. So then from here we can see O. Henry is quite clever, right? And observant.
Well, very much so. Yeah. I mean, of the human condition, which was in the most part very hard. It was a very hard life people lived.
Okay, so just like Charles Dickens sympathizes the poor people in London.
Yes.
O. Henry is for New York, and
Yes.
James Joyce is for Dublin.
Yeah, Ireland. Well, O. Henry would have read Charles Dickens, because Charles Dickens was not only the most famous writer in England during O. Henry's time, but he came to America twice.
Okay.
And gave popular speeches, and he would have read Dickens as he read Kipling. He read a lot of the English writers who were more famous at that time than American writers.
Yeah, I mentioned this because it's quite interesting that 3 writers are related to 3 important big cities.
Yes, very much so.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. The last question is about, it is said that O. Henry is Maupassant in America. In what way do you think O. Henry is similar to Maupassant? Is the style obvious in this story?
Yes, well, Guy de Maupassant was from actually a very different background. He was a very rich, wealthy, aristocratic family. But he like O. Henry, studied individual, and particularly was interested in psychology, which was becoming, a study at the time. And Maupassant was a little bit earlier than O. Henry.
Okay.
But in France. But he would have been read in French in England or translated into English. And O. Henry obviously knew about Maupassant because his style in some ways is very similar, pointing out clearly and using a twist at the end of the story. Which he wrote short stories, which Maupassant did. He wrote short stories about very, strong themes of giving or of jealousy or of anger or of patience. Strong themes, very simple themes in his story. But pointing out big truths. But each one used this twist at the end of the story. Now, so he gained a lot from Maupassant's writings, which he obviously had read because Maupassant's necklace was very famous about a gift of the lending a jewelry. And this comes out in O. Henry's things, but I think O. Henry, obviously focuses his in America at his time. Very different to the France at Maupassant's time. But also O. Henry brings more humour and maybe a little bit more irony into his stories.
And so-called twist plot supplies ending.
He partly did get this idea from Maupassant, who did use a twist at the end. Yes, was very good at using this plot twist.
All right.
So that's why people at this time, maybe who read, and could criticize him, or even actually, in some ways, it was could be a praise, saying that he was the Guy Maupassant of America, because Guy de Maupassant was a very respected writer. And so actually, it was probably a big praise for O. Henry.
And as I know, most of the writers criticize capitalism.
Well, I think if you were a writer who really cared about the human condition, they had to, because because of industrialization, people were growing incredibly rich. And also, America grew rich on not just the industrialization, but they grew rich on slavery, which is the most demeaning and terrible, disgusting.
Again, we discovered the dirty history of America.
Well, no, America grew rich on slavery and killing whales, one of the most beautiful animals living in the ocean. The most intelligent creature, brains much larger than our own brains. They just don't speak the same language as us. And America basically slaughtered whales by the millions and almost destroyed whales to extinction, and also lived off slaves, free labor. So they had very little respect for people or animals or the environment. And perhaps at this time, living in dirty cities covered in smog and coal, coal burning fires, and people dying very young. A lot of children died in infancy. I mean, Dickens, Maupassant, and O. Henry, and later Joyce. They needed someone. The poor people needed a voice. And these writers we're the voice of the people.
Okay. So that's good. No, we learned this from these writers, and
Sure.
yeah, I think after our discussion, probably the readers or the students can get a different picture of America or London.
I hope
Right.
so. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have 40. Good.
Good.
40 minutes. Okay.
Okay.